Um, Namaste. A warm welcome to the Learning Lens with Vyuha Learning Labs. Namaste, Anandji. This is a great pleasure to have you with us. So Anandji is the Chief Execution Officer, Chief Education
Education.
Officer at Zesta 3E4I. A very warm welcome to you, Anandji, and I'm looking forward for our conversation today.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do it. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always a fun thing to collaborate with Vyuha in its various forms. This is going to be another way of doing it, so I'm looking forward to see how it comes out.
True. So let's start with the first and the most basic question I think that we listen to from almost every school. It's this very basic question, like why IKS? So let's say if a child has grown up in India without formal, in a formal schooling, but has never come across what a Panchakosha is, or Nyaya is, or what Ayurveda is, or essentially what the basic philosophy of the Gurukula is itself. What do you think the child would be deprived of? Is it the culture, or do you think there's a difference in the way in the cognitive development of the child? What do you think? What do you think is the difference?
See, for all practical purposes, that child could be you and me, right? Because neither of us really went through an IKS system.
Correct.
Uh, so, if you see what is it that it has deprived us or our colleagues or our peers of, it depends upon the lens you look at. There are multiple ways to respond to this, really. And I'm not trying to evade the question. I'll try to collate the answer as we sort of evolve it. But it depends on the lens you're looking at. If you're looking at it from the point of view of what did it deprive me of in my attempt with the board exams? Nothing, right? What did it deprive me of, say, in my entering into a college? Again, nothing, right?
Correct.
So it really depends upon it. So if we're largely looking at very transactional, individualistic, commercial points of view, then perhaps it was not going to deprive you much, right? Because the IKS is not a tactical skill development thing, though there are systems in it for that purpose. You want to be a carpenter, you want to be a smith, or what have you. There are systems for that as well. There's no question about it. But the beauty about all of them is is essentially this, that in their development of the individual, they have ensured that the individual knows their place in the larger scheme of things, right?
Yeah.
And is thereby able to contribute the best to it, and not be disjoint from that. So one of the things that you would notice is there is a belonging, and this is a qualified word. It's not the standard word of belonging to a club or something of that sort. That's not what it is, right? So those are for creds and street creds and things like that. Oh, I'm from Harvard. I'm from IIT. I'm from whatever, some football club or what have you, right? Now there will be individuals, and it's very important to realize. And I'm not putting them down, nor am I trying to say that that's a undesirable. That's an inevitable thing. There will be individuals who will never have roots. They will go from one place to another, pick up whatever is the ways of that place. Even if the people of that place disown them and say that you're not one amongst us, they're like, who cares? I'm come to take what I can from this place. I will. I'm getting my, my profit, my convenience, my comfort. And as long as they're getting it, they stay there, and else they move to the next place and so on. This could be a figurative move or a literal move itself. So for such people, and for such prakritis, really, and a rooted philosophy and a rooted education like the IKS has very little to offer, and that's something to be recognized. One can't say that it's mandatory for everyone, right? It has its value even for that person if that person is sensitive to it. But if a person is in their cycle of life where they are not sensitive to it,
Yeah.
they're not going to appreciate it, right? Now let's look at the other set of people are sensitive. And so I'm not calling these people insensitive. I'm just saying they don't have that sensitivity developed. They don't have a sense of roots. They don't put down roots anywhere, right?
Correct.
Even with their own family, they might not have roots. They're like, okay, I've had my family. I'm now 18. I'm 21. Whatever. I've moved on. My family will take care of itself, and they go on, right? They'll do the occasional weekend calls. They'll do the festival calls. All of that stuff. They are fine. They're not. There is no dissonance. There's no conflict in their heart or in their mind. They're not even seeing it as, oh no, I know I'm not doing the right thing, but what else can I do? They're not even seeing it that way. They're saying this is how life is, and they
Yeah.
keep going. For such people, an IKS education or a non-IKS education is not going to hold much of value, right?
Mm.
It will probably be a cognitive load for them. They'll be like, why are they telling me all this? Just tell me how do I get what I want? That
Yeah.
kind of a attitude. But there are people who are sensitive, who like to belong, right? Now, for people of that sort who like to belong, IKS reveals your roots. Now, even for the first person, as is now quite commonly shown in science, while your mind is able to tell you these things, or your mind has convinced you about these things, your body carries your roots.
True.
You can't deny that part of it, right? You have grown insensitive to the telling of your body. That's a different thing. Um, but your body still holds those roots. Now, coming to the second set of people who are sensitive, this is where the mind and the body has some connection, not very deep,
Mm.
right? So these are the people who go out and then they start missing home. They'll start feeling that, oh, we're not celebrating Holi the way we used to celebrate. I miss this food. I miss my mom's this. I miss my grandmother's this.
Mm.
It's still at a very bhogi level. And
Mm.
can I keep going if I jump into too much of Sanskrit in between? Because I want to keep this for people um, who don't need to feel like you have to be Sanskrit adept to be able to understand this, right? Because these are very, very fundamental things. So
Yeah.
now, for those people who are there, you need a language because they are very easily convinced by the most convincing language. So if I give you a German philosophy of why are you missing this, it might feel very attractive to them, but deep down they feel, wait, but is that really me? Is that
Mm.
does that really explain why I'm feeling this? Something
Mm.
doesn't. They hunt, and then they come back to the philosophy or the way of their land, and things start making sense.
Mm.
Now, for sensitive folks of that sort, and this is a fairly large number. Again, I can't give you statistical numbers because no one has really done a survey of sorts for this. But for folks of that kind, an IKS education helps, right? Now, there are people who are very clearly connected between the mind and the body and the Atma as well. Now, let's bring in another word, right? So, and the Atma is really very loosely soul, but it's actually the recognition of your space in the larger paradigm, right? So, in or in the larger, what do we want to call it, divinity or what have you. So, for such people, being raised on a dissonant set of principles and ideologies and verbiage is disservice because they're always going to be in conflict. They're always going to keep wondering that this is not the food I'm able to digest. It's like, you're always being fed on something that's giving you an acid reflux, right? And these
Yeah.
people will very soon realize what is it that is happening, and then they'll find their alignment and they'll go ahead and make corrections with this. So to get back to your question, what is it that is deprived? Depending upon what kind of a prakriti the person is, what they are deprived of varies.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you not give it to the person would not even notice it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
second person, it's a case of, you didn't give me a bridge back.
Hmm.
Right? The third person, it's not just about you didn't give me a bridge back, it's like you didn't even You didn't let me create my home.
Yeah.
That is what I think it would be different. There's another way to look at this, as I was saying. Right? The other way to look at it is from the point of view civilization, and I look at it as one of the ruins, or rather the responsibility debt, however you want to translate that. Um, we are told of the five debts that we have, right, to the
Yeah.
various. The thing is, it's about continuity. So
Mm.
imagine you have started something that is beautiful from a cosmic, from a civilizational point of view. But the very impermanent nature of your body means that there will be a day when you're no longer there. But that work needs to continue.
Yeah.
By not being aware of it and continuing it, I would have, being a successor in, let's say, generationally, I am now incurring that debt even more. I'm not
Mm.
leaving because
Mm.
I have, whether directly or indirectly, gained from what you have done,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
We have all gained from the rivers here, whether we have seen that river in this land or not. We've gained from the soil, from the air, from all the wisdom and all the tapas that has happened on this land. That's why we are so connected to our mountains and our rivers and our trees and all of those things, right? The very fact that we worship trees endlessly and all of those things. So, so with this sort of continuity that is required, IKS helps you maintain that continuity along with the relevance, the generational relevance. That is, I think, what you would lose. And that's exactly what we have lost. If you notice what is the state today, while we might blame the invaders for having come and burnt a lot of the books and the texts and all of those things, we have not. Um, we've chosen convenience. We've chosen ease. We've chosen generationally sufficient incentives. That is what matters for as long as I live. Something
Mm.
that I'm going to live
Yeah.
for 60, 70 years. Just because I didn't ride this bike, how much of pollution am I going to be stopping? So who cares? So let me ride my bike. That kind of a mentality, which has crept in, um, has uh, has deprived us of the continuity that is required. And
Mm.
not having this thing. So from the day of independence itself, had we built our system of education, sort of rewound, reset, and built it in this manner, we could have stymied that. What we have ended up doing is that we followed an alien system that is
Mm.
providing us with tools for an alien culture and an alien way of being, in an alien sense of democracy or governance. Let's not call it just democracy. It's an alien sense of commerce. It's an alien sense of what artha means, what karma means, everything, right? What is all of these things. And we are serving that framework fairly okay.
Mm.
Uh, but the original thing that was created off this land. Because if you notice, you look at plants and you look at animals. A plant is very tied to the soil. You
Yeah.
uproot it, just randomly put it in another soil, it will decay, die, whatever. Similarly, if you just take a fish out of a particular thing and put it in some other place, it might adapt, might not, might die.
Mm.
Please kind of assume that it's okay. You pick up someone from Kenya and throw them in Siberia, they'll be fine.
Mm.
Um, but it's not entirely true. There is a callback to the land, and there is a
Mm.
some people have it, some people realize it over time, um, and some people never realize it in their lifetime. And I think the IKS thereby deprives this belonging, this ability to reap the most out of the land, not in an exploitative way, but in a
Mm.
connected way, in a relational way.
Mm.
Deprives, I think, that most. Now, if you were to measure it in commercial times, commercial terms, as to wait a second, so how much does that cost me on an annual basis? That's it. That's not the way we do it. That's not the
Mm.
measure that it's like you don't use a screw gauge to measure the height of a mountain. Different
Mm.
instruments, different purposes. Um, we measure lifetime in terms of maintaining the sanctity of this earth and civilization and interspecial sanctities.
Mm-hmm.
That terms on an annual basis, it's a huge amount of deprivation. If that were the lens and that's the measure that we're using, then it's a huge deprivation that a non-IKS based education is going to cost.
Correct. That's a
Yeah,
very deep answer. Like you've spoken it in like an entire life of a person. What is the impact an IKS education
yeah.
can make or it can't make? Um, I mean, based on what you told, there was one thing that that came to my mind. For a student, in the start, you told that for a student who has no idea about, or if the student just doesn't care, you just give me what I want and then I'm happy with it. But don't you think, like, at least when the child is entering the school, he has no idea about, what is being taught.
True.
He's like a blank board, and the teacher can, like the teacher, it's up to the teacher to share what the teacher wants to share. So don't you think, or do you think that in IKS way of teaching, um, like the child absolutely does not know the difference between a holistic approach or a rote learning approach, but don't you think like that holistic IKS approach will make difference to the child irrespective of whether the child knows what it wants?
Um, so let me sort of play back the way I've understood. I'm not quite sure I entirely understood. So are you asking me, for a child, will they
Yeah,
know the difference between a healthy education and a dissonant education? Is that what you're asking me?
yeah, partly. And also whether the child, let's say when he just joins a school, he doesn't know what kind of framework, whatever is being taught. He just knows whether he's having fun or he's not having fun, that's all.
True.
So don't you think, like, the child has absolutely no idea of what is the pedagogy, what is the framework that's being taught, and he's just listening to the teacher. So just listening to, just being open to whatever the teacher is saying, do you think that the holistic IKS way of teaching will make a difference to the child, whether, irrespective of whether the child knows, okay, like, I just want marks for my exam. I
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
that,
yeah.
that's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it definitely does. And this is what I was also trying to get to, but I don't think I did a good job in answering your previous question. You see, today, and there is no such thing called as an IKS way of teaching. I'd say there
Mm,
should be an IKS way of being, right? Because
mm,
an IKS system had expectation of the societal construct as well. So
yeah, yeah.
you can't have a very a hedonistic way or a disjointed way of society,
Mm.
but being educated in an IKS way,
True,
right?
true.
It's very difficult. So and that is where today, if you look at today's education, that's where also the concept, even though it's not IKS based, it's very difficult. See, I am your child. I go to school and I am told this is the way to be. I come back and I see that you're driving around on your bike without a helmet. I
Mm,
say,
mm,
wait, I mean, what's this thing? And you're saying that just don't worry about all these things, or something like
mm,
that.
mm, 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 mm.
And I'm now trying to reconcile. I'm like, wait, teacher says this, mom saying this. Okay, I think there's always, so that means
Mm,
whatever is told or whatever we're saying is education is not non-negotiable. Let's put it that way, right? It
mm,
starts in kind of an innocent way like that, and then over time it becomes, you know what, they say will say certain things. You figure out what is convenient for yourself.
mm, mm,
You
mm.
get what I'm saying? Now, this sort of a thing primarily will not be there in an IKS, and due to that, will the child notice? I think that in an IKS setup, a child will feel immense consistency,
Mm. Yeah, true.
right? Because teacher to teacher to teacher, you're not talking uh, shallow. You're
Very
not
true.
saying, oh, language is like this, but I'm not a maths person and maths doesn't do this. Like, there is no division. If you're talking
Mm.
systems, and if you're talking systems, um, there's a difference. The language changes. Imagine seven teachers or just seven adults all talking about a system, right? Now that is going to be very different because in the system you'll have different lenses. I can bring in the commercial lens, I can bring the mathematical lens, I can bring a scientific lens, I can bring in a people and a sociological lens, various things I can do because it's a system. A system will have all of these things. But when I take this apart, examined apart, they're not the system. And hence the language, the verbiage, the isolation, the no, 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 you keep your distance, I keep my, all of those things come into play. So will see a geography teacher as being nicer than a maths teacher. You know what I'm saying? Or a geography teacher being nicer than a language teacher, whatever. I'm not I don't want to sort of fortify the fear against maths. Maths is such a brilliant subject for that. But when you have everyone talking about one system, you end up just having your favorite. I like listening to this person. I like listening to that person. That person understands me. This person understands me. But we're not talking about the same system. So I don't develop an extended dislike or an extended affection towards the subject because the system is the same.
Yeah.
So it's like, think about this, right? If you're talking about a meal, my grandmother makes it better. My mother makes it the most amazing. Then somebody else does it okay. This does that. Okay. I don't have anything against the meal. The meal is something I still enjoy. I just would have different preferences with different people. So when I'm studying systems, when you're studying things in an IKS approach, you do not get the opportunity to extend a personal relationship to the subject.
True.
Right? So I would say these kind of dissonances, these kind of ruptures that exist are not possible and are in a way supported in today's educational setup and schooling setups. I think that would not be there. And that would be noticeable. Kids are very good at noticing these nuances. They might not have articulation skills, but they have the sensitivity, an immense sensitivity to realize that, everyone is in the same direction.
Yeah.
If they didn't know that, I'll tell you why they know that, because that's exactly how they're able to pit a mother against a father and a teacher against a teacher. Because they can suddenly see, wait, no, 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 mom's going this way, dad's going this way. Or this teacher, I just saw her smile. That means she's going that way, this one's going this way.
True.
When you see a sort of an alignment to a larger way of being, there is greater consonance. And I think that's very, very important. And that will tell in the child's character and upbringing.
It's a very important point that you brought up, like consistency in every teacher, like everywhere you see at home, you see in the school, they're all talking about the same way of life. Like I think that should be the most important outcome of
Yes. We
education.
don't have that. Because now what is happening is, in the name of choices, everything, even if I go from one relative's house to another relative's house, the ways of the houses are different.
Yeah.
Right? So you have someone, you say that, oh, some are strict people, some are not so strict, some will follow this, some don't follow, whatever may be. But you notice that in India, largely, I'm just going to take this as an example. Most of the houses, you'll wash your legs and you'll enter. Or you've entered and you'll take your shoes off right before entering. Now, uh, now let's say you didn't know about it and you assume that wearing shoes inside the house is normal, right? Imagine you walk into a random Indian house and you just kept walking around with your shoes. The look on the people's face will change. That is because that is what I'm saying. This sort of there's a lot of underlying concerns that we have in this country already. Yeah, we tend to not dismiss. We tend to sort of couch it under the term of culture and tradition. It's a lot more than that. It's this alignment that we have, right? And hence certain things are not seen as alien or weird,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so those are, I think those things will be reduced for a child who's raised in an IKS system, and that will be noticeable.
Very true. Like I like how, like, every possibly the whole life of a child you've just brought in to your answer. That's a very nice, like that's very very deep and a wholesome answer, I'd say. So yes, Anandji. So the next question that I wanted to ask you was a little bit about yourself. So you've been in this space for more than a decade. You've been in different parts. I think from education and tech, and I think in curriculum design and teacher training. You name it. I think you've done that. So tell us a bit more about what your current your current organization Zesta 3E4I. What do you do there? What does the organization do?
Yeah, actually, there's a part of me which was not just education, right? So, uh, while technically I've been teaching since the age of 16 or so,
Hmm. Okay.
uh, I've been qualified to be a computer scientist, and I was that for a while, right? So I
Okay.
was in the space, working in compilers and file systems and all the stuff that people, it's a non-glamorous stuff. Right? These are not the things that you will have a dinner conversation about. Right? These
Mm-hmm.
systems work. And it was fun doing all of that. Then I tried to quit many times and go into schooling. I used to also teach at universities and colleges. I
Okay.
used to teach computer science basically. But then I realized that K-12 is really where I wanted to be. By the time
Mm.
they come to college, most people have a chip on their shoulder, and you're not. There's no relationship there. Very little.
Mm.
I would say no. It's very little. So K-12 is where I was enjoy. I realized I was having more fun. So,
Mm.
but all the time I was also working, and I was enjoying that as well. I was having a wonderful time. I'm not one of those software IT slash digital slash tech people who get tired of their job. I did. I was enjoying it. I was having a fantastic time. So it was, but the education piece was always either in the evenings or weekends or a volunteering stint and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So tried quitting many times, many times. And then I think 2016 was when I finally decided to say, no, I can't juggle both. It's just not working. Right.
Mm.
And I wanted to do this in a dedicated manner. Came back to India. For some reason, it still took another 6 months before I could actually quit, and then
Okay.
quit. And then from thereafter, now it's 10 years roughly since I've been doing only this.
Oh, okay. Mm.
Yeah, but when I came back, also I wanted to understand under-resourced education as a function of geography. So I was volunteering at different places in India with NGO communities and all, were working either in the rural space or in the under-resourced community space. Because I wanted to see whether that differs for depending upon where you are in India. As in,
Mm-hmm.
other problems of Tamil Nadu the same as that of Gujarat, same as that of Himachal Pradesh, the same as that of Assam, those kind of things, right? Didn't get, and anyway, I love traveling also, so I thought I'll combine both of these and get around all over India to it. But I did. I just managed three, four places, and then the last place I was at, which was a school outside Dehradun, a village outside Dehradun. The gentleman there, he says, "Not enough of roaming around. Just stay here. Let's build things together. There's a lot of work to do." His name was Gopal Krishnaswamy. He was called as GK Swami. Amazing person. As in one of a kind human being.
Okay.
When I met him, he was 80. Uh,
Oh, okay.
and you had to be told that he was 80 because you can see his energy. He was
Mm.
equivalent of a whole army of youngsters.
Mm.
Amazing person. Learned a ton from him. Learned a ton of how an NGO should be run from him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And this whole sense of wanting to give, right? I think was fortified and nourished in his tutelage, I would say. So I learned a lot. I was pretty much working 24/7, but it was
Okay.
joyful. It was very beautiful because till then I was doing a ton of things, right? Till I got back till 20. Not even, yeah, I'd say safely I can say till mid of 2017. Um, there was there's only two things I didn't do, which was swimming and bungee jumping. I don't have any. I don't have any fun being suspended by a cord in midair or anything. So two things I didn't do. Apart from that, everything. There was really nothing that I didn't do. So my week was always like 20 different things that I was doing. I would be
That's very
cooking at
nice.
places. I ran a literary magazine. I was doing photography, painting, you name it, right? Travel, all of that stuff. Ever since I got into education, the only thing I've been doing is education.
Mm-hmm.
this whole completely monodimensional person, reading about this, nothing else but this. And for some reason, I'm not regretting it.
Mm.
So I was always in this. I was with the NGO for about nearly 4 years. Then when the pandemic hit, just before that, about 3 4 months before the pandemic hit, I had actually put down my papers anyway, because we were expecting our child, and I wanted to be more available, for my child, and my wife. So I kind of said I'm going to wean off. I'll still volunteer, but I'm not going to be coming here every day. I'm not going to be doing this 24/7. There was, apart from the sleeping time, I was only doing work.
Mhm.
I didn't want to do any more of that kind of stuff. My last day was the day when the lockdown was announced. Very
Okay.
coincident. Very coincident. And then I was at home. I just had a lot of time on hand because I was going at a pace all these years, and suddenly you're just in inertia. You're just running, and you see
Yeah,
the whole world stop, but you're still running. And you're like, where is everyone? Uh,
yeah.
then my daughter was born, so I had my daughter on one arm. I was like cooking or something with the other, and I have headphones on and do something. So it was fun. So I worked with some, and that's when some of the edtech companies they reached out, and we built some amazing systems together. Some systems which are even precursors of the kind of AI that you're seeing today. Uh,
Mm.
Beautiful teams, very nice time. I had a very good time, but I knew I had to come back to schools because that's really where I wanted to invest my energy. And I was also very clear. I think across certain examples of life, I figured out that I don't know how much time I have left, so I might as well spend it only on productive things and not waste it on non-productive things. So using that as a meter, this thing, and that's when folks came together with some of Zista was already existing as an organization doing some other kind of work. We want to get
Mm.
into, so they said let's partner, uh, and we decided to partner. And that's sort of what is going on. So again, to answer what is it that we do at Zista, is it's easier to, if it had to be a tweetable summary, we work on school excellence, any asset of school excellence, right?
Got
Educational school excellence. So we will work with teachers, with school leaders, with curriculum, with school operating procedures, with audit and quality checks. If there are some policy organizations, we don't mind working with them to advocate on certain things. Which is why you'll see a lot of my commentary on, the CBSE or the NCRT or any other policy that comes out. So that's pretty much the range of what we do. ICAS was something that I was interested in individually, personally, way before the NEP, right?
Okay.
I think it was just that NEP gave credence to what I was doing. Till then,
Mm.
people would be like, "Oh, whatever, you do whatever you want, don't tell us." And then when NEP brought these things, they say, wait, 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 it's the same thing that you're talking about the other day.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, and they'll be like, oh, now tell us. Okay. I had no So that's when I started presenting, especially about the Panchakosha, etc. It started with that, though I kept telling people, you're taking a jump that is far more than you can span.
Mm.
Panchakosha is not where you should start. There are many other things. Um, but they're like, no, no, that's what the NEP says. And then the NEP had also made a caricature out of it. They just said, oh, it's just five things, eat properly, breathe properly. And like, I wish it was that simple. I wish it was that, because why would I write a chapter in an Upanishad if all I wanted to tell you was eat properly and breathe properly? I would have put a pamphlet and stuck it on a rule somewhere. You wouldn't write a whole section in an Upanishad. But anyway, and then I did one of the presentations where I actually went verse by verse explaining why it isn't that trivial. And
Mm.
it's how
Mm.
it can be if you actually think through it. And how, like, by the time you come to the Manomaya Kosha itself, we are realizing that it's, your existing amazing literature of the Vedas, etc., are supporting it at that level, because beyond that, it is not what these scriptures can also provide. And and the eye case is brilliant in that. It has that humility. While it might consider the Vedas as being the pinnacle of their thought process, they admit that there is something beyond that also.
Yeah. Mm.
That humility is beautiful. Like when you listen to the Nasagya Sutram also, you from the Rig Veda, it's amazing the way they go about conceiving of how it would have been the state of origin of the universe. You'll hear statements which sound like, oh, we have thought it through, it should have been this, but also we don't know whether it could be this. It's this willingness to be open and learn, which is why I actually feel that the ancient Indian mind was by far the most scientific one, contrary to what people like to imagine. Right?
Mm.
But hey, that's so. So back to your question. Zista 3 for I, we don't do things like infrastructure. We won't build buildings for you. We won't get you government licenses or any of that stuff. We won't do vendor management. We won't find out who to go to for your uniform and your shoes and those kind of things, or books. None of that stuff. We won't do accounting.
Okay,
Apart from this, pretty much everything that the school requires, we work on.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has been a fun journey so far. And the IKS bit sort of came along. It's when people
Mhm.
started seeing that there is value, uh, that they say, okay, help us navigate this thing. Of course, it wouldn't be that uh, wise a question or a statement. It usually starts, and I'm sure you've heard it too. You'll have schools come and say, can you do some IKS thing for us? And I'll be like, what is this IKS thing? It's not a salad or something that I can cook up for you. But yeah, I think that's what they mean, saying that help us navigate the IKS.
Mhm.
That's what I also do. So, yes, this is the range of what we do at 3 4.
That's amazing. So, following up on what you were saying on the Panchakosha model, I remember reading this blog that you had written on like what you were saying. You've explained every verse, and you've explained the Panchakosha model. So I just wanted to ask you. I wanted to compare Bloom's taxonomy and the Panchakosha model, basically. So, Bloom's taxonomy is something that's there in every teacher training course, and just it's basically something that everybody follows. Do you think that there is something in Panchakosha model that is not addressed in the Bloom's taxonomy, or how do you compare both of them?
So, firstly, oh, one more firstly, as a little firstly before firstly. Uh, Most of the teachers, as of today, do not follow the Bloom's taxonomy properly, right?
Oh,
That
okay.
itself is very, very poorly, shabbily implemented, right? The
Mm,
gentleman is just rolling in his grave.
mm,
Very badly done. If you can, and I'm willing to vouch my whatever you think is precious of mine. I'm willing to give it to you if you can find me randomly sample 10 teachers and ask them one question: have they read the original Bloom's textbook?
mm.
And if even one of those 10 tell you that they have read it, I will give you what you ask.
Okay.
I can very openly tell you. This is the reason being that we haven't read it. It's like how most people haven't read the NEP or the NCF. They just haven't.
Mm,
The excuse for not reading the NCF was it was 620 pages plus.
mm, mm,
But I said, okay, I'll give you a 60 page. Will you read? They didn't. But that was the length of the NEP. That also they didn't.
mm,
So the irony in the educational systems, people don't read,
mm,
which is to me the most astounding thing. Can you imagine the core of education being this, being literate, being informed, and most of our teachers don't read. So the Bloom's
mm,
taxonomy itself has been misunderstood and very poorly implemented. So that is one side. Now Bloom's, of course, he and his team they tried all three sides. It was not just the cognitive domain; they also have the affective and psychomotor domains and all of that stuff. So which are not as popular as the cognitive domain, right? But the thing is that you're separating these things out. It's like what the West did to science, right? They separated the subjective out of science, the personal and the experience out of science. The same way this was done. And secondly, The Bloom's taxonomy is largely for identifying learning outcomes and
Mm-hmm.
cognitive skills that are being exercised in order to achieve those learning outcomes. Right? So that itself is misunderstood. They suddenly say, "Oh, we use Bloom's for this, we use Bloom's for that." It's sort of being repurposed in many ways. Right? Um, Now, having said that, in the IKS, Panchakosha, of course, being one of the, and I think that's, it's, as I keep saying, it's very esoteric in a way to be the starting point for a teacher. The first thing that I would really think the teacher should understand is the Pramana framework.
Mm-hmm.
And the Pramana framework itself, as you have the Pramata, you have the Prameya, you have the Pramana, and then the Prama. Right? Now, the Bloom's taxonomy focuses largely on the Prama.
Mm. Yeah.
Not in terms of the way it is defined in IKS, but acceptable, right? Because what Prama is valid knowledge. The Bloom's doesn't really worry about the nature of the knowledge. It's like whatever, if it's a learning outcome, then this is how we're going to go about it, and this is where we'll place it, and we identify that these are the cognitive levels that are expected. The Bloom's taxonomy itself has gone through a revision where they've added the knowledge domain to it and sort of made it into a grid and all that stuff, which is fantastic. When you take the system that is there, the Pramana system, the Panchakosha, and then you add to it things like Vyashti, Samashti, Srishti, Paramashti, you end up getting a very composite way of knowing,
Hmm.
which doesn't prematurely take the individual out of the picture.
Mm. That's super
So
important.
it tries to be objective prematurely. Not just
Mm.
Bloom, I think the whole Western canon itself largely. It does not want to deal with the human frailty and individuality. That is why spirituality also has been removed. That is why your personal feelings or any of that. And now we're coming back to saying, no, 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 we need SEL.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yes, of course, you can't, because you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah.
See, there is a certain mileage that this sort of impersonal knowledge and impersonal thinking has. But we've hit that mileage point. Right? We can keep going into more and more, but now we're getting into intelligence, like artificial intelligence. You're coming into the impersonal space.
Mm.
You're teetering on that edge, and that's what was incorporated from day one in the Indian knowledge system. They never ever separated it. Like even as I keep saying often, right? Even if you wanted to be a carpenter, you were taught about how your response to the wood is, and your connection with the wood, and the wood's prakriti and all of that stuff, and the
Mm.
right to use with the right wood and all of those pieces. So the entire thing was very spiritually rooted. It was not said that we'll come to the spirit later on. But you'll hear even a lot of the current day Indians say that, right? Oh, spirituality now is good when you're 50, 60.
Yeah.
Like it's good as an afterthought. And that's not how the IKS looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very embedded, it's very integral. And I think that's important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I'd say that the Blooms misses out is that. And it's not necessarily Blooms, but they've all been raised in that line of thinking, right? Whereas what we would have integrated yoga, and we would have integrated Nyaya, and we would have integrated the Pramana framework, all of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you're at once feeling the logic that you are putting out. You can feel it in your cells, right? It's not like, forget about all this. Just if A then B, and then if B the if A. Now you're not going on those kind of um, impersonal way of thinking. It's a very personal way of thinking.
Mm.
That was incorporated. That was given a language. That was given a structure. That was given a structure to comprehend. There was given a structure to assess in a way. All of those exist, and that's what I think. To make it more tangible, let's just look at just this one aspect of the. Actually, we can look at any of them, but let's just look at the Pramana framework, right?
Okay.
As I said, the Bloom's taxonomy and all of these things largely they focus on the Prama. the valid knowledge that is the output.
Yeah.
Um, and thereby you create learning objectives around it and say that this is what having learned looks like,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And it is only those lakshanas that were looked at. It We don't, for instance, and now we're trying to do it with the NEP and all of that stuff. We're talking about dispositions and things like that. But now having learned something, it's is not just a matter of you being able to articulate it, explain it, apply it,
Hmm.
or provide your evaluation of it. It changes you as a person. See, the Aishwarya who was there, um, say 50 minutes ago, is no longer the Aishwarya who's there now having heard this conversation. Whether it is
True.
a grand conversation or not is a secondary issue. The fact that you have heard it and that it has tickled a whole bunch of things and it has triggered a whole bunch of things, even if it was not something I said, but it did have its impact. That Aishwarya is no longer the same,
Yeah.
right? I have to assess that changed Aishwarya and what
Mm.
that change means. This is
Very.
not something the Blooms or the Finks or the Marzanas do. They don't do. Doesn't
Mm.
it would do it. It would say that
Mm.
you are no longer the Aishwarya of 1 minute ago. What has changed? What have you become? Are you becoming more in line with what you should be, or what is well
Mm.
expected?
Mm.
That is not a test that is done in a workshop.
True.
There will be people watching you. There will be people looking at you. And even today, if you notice, these are very common things that we would hear amongst our relatives, like your grandmother who sees you after a year, uh, or someone of that kind who sees you after a year, or after a period of time, will notice things about you before you even open your mouth,
Yeah.
right? That sensitivity is universal. It's not something that's only of people of this land or something. It is there everywhere. It is just the indigenous communities and tribes always had this thing. Most people. It's just that it has become popular to be insensitive or desensitized to that. Whereas the
Mm.
I keep that sensitivity going. So, like in one of the things that I would say about the assessment framework that should be there in IKS, there is of course going to be people who will assess you on what you know, can do, etc. But there will also be peripheral people who are always just walking around and watching everyone. So they will watch the Aishwarya who was there on 1st of June and the Aishwarya who is now different on 1st of July and 1st of December. And they will inform the teachers. She's becoming a bit like this. Don't
Mm.
get aggravated for these things.
Mm.
So,
It's a
not to
very.
give you a score, but more to sort of work together to develop you. It's not about giving you a score, right?
Mm.
That's a pointless exercise. But there would be these people who would be invested in gauging your spirit,
Yeah.
right? They are the wise people,
Mm.
right? So that is the kind of assessment framework that one would, I think, have in an IK system. Like you call the elders. You have some elders in the school who are listening. They're just sitting and listening. They're sometimes in your class watching you, uh, and they have the ability to tap into your spirit, and I
Mm.
old school and things like that. So yeah, so I'd say blooms from a even from a question design point of view, right? You see, you'll have questions like, oh, if this was done and this was so and so killed this person, and then how many people remain,
Mm.
is is very transactional. Versus saying that, uh, how does that make you feel? Do you feel good enough to evaluate? Getting into your space, because that is also part of what has to be tested and
Mm.
understood. The test is the wrong word. More, it has to be unpacked and understood. Bloom's would not do that. Bloom's does it. It's not designed for that. And in having very, very partially and marginally developing the other sides, the affective and the psychomotor, it wasn't able to translate. Even if they had a vision of doing it holistically, they were not able to translate. If you look at
Mm.
Martinos and Finks and Solo and all of the other frameworks that exist, they've all tried in different ways to grapple. Like Marzana, for example, brings in an element of metacognition,
Mm.
right? Metacognition is something that's very inherent to IQS, right?
True.
Especially when you take up something like a Panchakosha. And if
Hmm.
I were to, the usual way I interpret a Panchakosha, the kosha itself being your ignorance,
Hmm.
right? These are 5 levels of ignorance that you have. And as in when you unpack your ignorance, there are things that open up to you,
Yeah.
right? And what does it mean to be an Aishwarya situated in that moment with a whole sheath of ignorance opened up,
Hmm.
right? It's very different. It's not what these frameworks do. Whereas an IKS you do it very nicely.
Okay. Like you've unpacked some very subtle things about a person, which I don't
Yes,
think like you can measure using any
exactly.
checklist or
True.
any marks
And
or
you don't
anything.
need to, right? And the problem, what has happened is, if you look at uh, the modern and the ancient way, right? I'm sure if the people in India, even today, if they say that I'm so and so Shishya, you will automatically say that, oh, yeah, then this person must be of that caliber.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We don't say that doesn't matter. Still, please fill out this form and then take this test and do this. We don't do that. Uh, Today, the reputation of the teacher doesn't exist. You can't go somewhere and quote your
Mm.
science teacher's name and
Mm.
expect it to even make sense to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then, what would happen was when you are tutored and nourished and nurtured by a person, certain things are granted, they're just given. You know this person have this sensitivity. You know this person will not have this approach towards certain things. You know this person has got that depth, will
Mm.
have that articulation skill or whatever, various characteristics of the person, right? Which is why even in those days they'll be like, oh, he's Vishwamitra's Shishya. He's Vasishta's sister. What more can you ask? That kind of a
Yeah.
thing made sense. Today that doesn't exist. You don't go around saying so and so that I have so and so's student. It doesn't matter. Uh, and that is what I think the assessment also brings, because having been near that person,
Mm.
right, uh, you would have imbibed so much,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which you can't always measure. You don't have a gauge for everything.
Yeah. And finally, that's also the point, right, Anandji? Like, it's not about how much you remember and you can just write on the paper the next day. It's finally how much of, let's say, concentration or empathy or like those skills are what finally takes you in the long run. It's not the. It's like
I'd
if
say
you've
they're
done
all
that.
important. As in,
Mm.
now I'll have to sort of switch to the other side of me, right? Because I would always say that these things are important. What you have learned, memorized, because they are all qualities of you, right?
Mm.
If all that I am is a very sensitive, kind person, then all that I am is a very sensitive, kind person. You
Mm.
can't say that because he's eventually that is what matters. It's okay if he doesn't understand maths, physics, chemistry, biology.
No, no, yeah,
You
got
get what I'm trying to say, right? I'm not saying that you said that. I'm just saying that this is kind of a very common narrative or tone
it.
that people take. Say that isn't this finally what matters? How does it matter whether someone could solve a calculus problem? And then it does, because it shows that the child or that individual had that grasping power, was
Mm.
able to move into that abstract, was able to see what that function meant, and then compute the area under it and do that. They didn't do it is a secondary, is another point. Um, but you can't compensate that with kindness, or you can't compensate that with something else. You need this, you need that. I'm saying you
Mm.
need to know the area under the curve. You also need to be a good person to take people under your shelter also. Both are important.
Correct. Yeah. Like that brings me to my next question. I think this is also from one of the blogs that you had written actually. It was about how you've compared rote learning and memory. Today everybody is going away from rote learning and like they're trying to discard it, and it's for
Yeah.
the good reasons. But you also mentioned how in Gurukulas they had this tradition of chanting. There was repetition. They used memory, and it was very deliberate. So like what is the difference between the memorization that was followed in the Gurukulas, or the value of memory in building something, whereas rote learning, where like which is absolutely pointless. Like, what is the difference between those two? Like, how do you utilize memory to for something valuable, basically?
See, nothing can be done without memory. That's the
Hmm.
fundamental, right? You
Hmm.
can't even go back home if you didn't know the route back home.
Correct.
Very simple, right? So memory has, as in it has unquestionable value, right? So
True.
when people say that no, 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 why do you what is memorization is a waste of time, I can't understand where they're coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Memorization is absolutely essential. The the thing that follows is important. We don't end our lives with memorization. You've
Mm.
memorized. Now what? Now the so the difference that is there in today's system and what used to be there in IKS, of which there is evidence. It's not like hearsay or wishful thinking. There is evidence of this having been the case.
Got
In today's schooling system, I'm getting you to memorize and I'm not doing much with it.
it. Hmm.
I'm
Agreed.
only saying, have you memorized? Have you memorized? Have you memorized? You get what I'm trying to say, right? I tell you
100%.
that a particular war took place in 1905. And then I say, okay, when did this war take place? And you say 1905.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, my job is done, your job is done, let's all go home.
Yeah.
There's a difference between this. So if that is all my expectation is, that is all your brain is going to be trained to do,
Mm.
which is an utter disservice to the cognitive prowess that exists in every individual,
Mm.
right? It's like saying, can you get onto a bicycle? Yes. Show me. Okay. Now get off. Now go home. I could ride the bicycle also. I could, go on one wheel. I could do it without hands oil. I could do so many things. You're not letting me
Yeah.
do that. Now, what happened? And the Gurukula system, what was there in the rather the ancient way of doing things, there were multiple things that they were very clearly aware of from a neuroscience point of view, right? And that is being validated today.
Mm-hmm.
It has been rubbished all around because it is fancy to rubbish all of these things. But today it is being validated. And that
Got
is number one. You have working memory, you have long term memory.
it. Mm.
If you do not commit your things to long term memory, you're going to be cluttering your working memory and thereby have lesser space to process and do things.
Mm.
When I've committed everything to long term memory, my working space is now open. I can invoke any one of them because they're already there.
Mm.
I'm not going to lose anything. I have created my ways of memorizing them, remembering them. Whenever I want to, I can bring it onto my working memory, working space, and now do what you ask me to. I can reason, I can apply, I can twist it, I can play with it, I can convert it into numbers, I can do so many things. That's point number one. And this, as I was saying, has got current validation also, right? Second thing is this the notion of rhythm,
Hmm.
right? Now, when nothing was memorized, nothing existed, even a mathematical formula was set to meter.
Mm.
Now, this was again very well understood about the brain that when you do that, the brain just remembers it forever. And the effort, everything also is significantly reduced, right? Again, there's a ton of studies today that are validating that, right? It's just like that. As in, like, I would have studied something back in my seventh standard or something like that. You just tell me two words from that, like the Bhagavad Gita chapter, and I'll immediately start telling you the remaining. It just comes. I'm
Mm.
not even,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like I'm putting any effort in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The same thing is with jingles, like advertisement jingles or songs
Hmm.
that you would have heard of and you forgot, and then one person gives you just one word, and then the whole thing takes off,
Yeah.
right? So, so they knew how to combine rhythm and
Hmm.
melody and meter with this memorization. So they were very. So why I'm trying to bring that in is not just to keep justifying certain elements, but to show you that it was intentional. The memorization thing was intentional because they wanted you to remember.
Mm.
Now, the third, and I think the very important thing to realize is that this whole thing that people say today, don't make me memorize, help me understand why. Now,
Mm.
an understanding at an age which is third grade or fourth grade can be premature. What do
Mm.
you mean do with this understanding? I tell you 3 times 5 is 15, right? And I'm showing it to you, let's just say, with very concrete things. I'm saying there are, see, the three groups of 5, and so if you count them, it's 15. So 3 times 5 is 15. Now remember, you are not going to lose anything in life because you didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Now, having remembered it, any time in life, if I'm able to recall it, I can use it where I need to create understanding. These are the
Mm.
kind of constructs. And so there are two parts to it. One is there's no need to get into premature explanation. And I think IKS kind of was very clear about that. Don't worry about it. You will understand when the time is right. And each person's time ripens differently,
Mm.
right? Because there are times I remember, I said I did all the scoring job pretty well. Okay. Physics and all of the stuff I did, I scored what I had to score. There were much later in my sort of mid 20s or something, things would make sense and at very random places. I
Mm.
remember refraction making such bringing it was like a whole brain exploding, and I could see the clarity of it all, and I could see it with full clarity,
Mm.
right? And I don't know, I think I was in my shower or something as random as that, and then suddenly everything just made sense, and I'm saying, oh God, now I get it.
Ah.
So this is something also of the brain that was, I think, understood. That when you load it, the way it keeps combining with experiences that you're going to continuously have is something that you can't entirely um orchestrate.
Mm.
And hence, preloading has its value. Preload, remember, it will start blending when it has to blend.
Mm.
On demand or accidental, however it is. Like for instance, you might tell me something which suddenly I will connect to something I learned in sixth standard with something in 12th standard with another thing that I saw that day with what my mother said. And then it'll all make sense. That is the capacity and the capability of the human brain. We are
Mm.
expecting a very linear flow. You will tell me, you will explain, you will show me how to apply, you'll do this, everything, only then I'll move to the next thing. I'm like, why? Have faith in the the timelessness of these things, and that they will connect and make sense in very different ways. So what
Mm.
they did is they really took the kernel of things and front loaded it, saying that just memorize it. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, when you have a dream, there will be a character in the dream who will say something, and you will wake up saying, "Wait, now it makes sense."
Mm.
Right? Um, Allow for that,
Mm. Okay.
and this is very important. Aishwarya, could you just pause for a second? I think there's someone at the door. I just need to check. Can you just pause the recording or what? Or you can let the recording keep going. I'll just be back in a second.
Sure.
Is that this whole front loading has the advantage of allowing for the processing to happen even when the teacher was not around
Mm.
or even when class is not happening, right? This whole thing of saying that no, no, until you explain it to me and unless you do this, I'm not going to do. The whole linear flow assumes is a lot of mistrust. It basically doesn't trust the brain to process
Mm.
it. And I'm not making a case for serendipity. I'm not saying that everything should be accidental and it should all just come out. I'm not making a case for that at all. I'm saying whatever you need to teach it in the most effective way that the brain needs. But then there are certain things that will only make sense when it is time and also only when you have the right experiences. So a lot of what was taught was not about A plus B and all of those kind of things. Right? There were a lot of spiritual things, there are a lot of things about your own self. There are a lot of things about the world around you that was taught. Now, at that early, at that young an age, you're not going to make sense. I don't want to give you a premature understanding, explanation of for sake of understanding that will prime you. Because thereafter you will only assume that that is the right thing because Anand sir said so or something. Whereas I'm saying load it, keep it. Let's
Mm.
let's get experiences, and when you're having those experiences, I will invoke that shloka or I'll invoke that sutta or whatever it is, and then I'll ask you, wait a second, how does it make sense? Now
Mm.
you see why that was said. Now do you see that what they meant by the swan and the pond was not a swan and a pond, but someone who comes and rests on a space that is inviting them. And that's what it
Mm.
was supposed to be. Those kind of things. Whereas if a prematurely itself, I told you, okay, the swan, the pond that they say, the swan is supposed to be someone who comes and the pond is supposed to be something like this. For life, you're going to only admit that meaning.
Yeah.
Whereas you will not allow other possible connotations and interpretations that might come up. So there is a value to that. So the memorization, to tie it all up, after saying these three things, right? If you stop with getting me to memorize and then checking whether I've memorized or not, it is utter disservice to the human capacity
Hmm.
and the spirit. And unfortunately, our current education system is largely doing that. These are the 5 reasons for World War One. What were the 5 reasons for World War One? Those
Yeah.
kind of, right? And that doesn't help. That really doesn't help. Because never, even if you told me, but no, Anand, in grade 8, we can only do that much. Because in grade 12, we are going to build on it. I will even admit that, but you're not doing that.
Hmm.
Grade 8, we're giving you 5 things to remember. In grade 8, we're giving you a different set of 5 things to remember. So it's just
Hmm.
a accumulation of facts, right? You're not building on them. You're not doing something with it. You're not analyzing what did your mind go through when you saw this. I remember doing this World War class session, and we actually did a whole class on military strategy by
Interesting.
just looking at the
Oh,
Europe and showing where was each person at each point of time.
that's very interesting.
Yeah, and now you tell me, how would you have attacked? What would you do? You weaken this and you do this and you do this and you send a small force there to still create a little bit of niggling here, but then go here. And the kids were then seeing it differently. They were
Hmm.
not just seeing it as a bunch of facts. I'm saying, so if you're only going to give me facts and do nothing with it,
Hmm.
that's not memorization also. That's just wrong. But when you load a lot of facts up front in a very, very rhythmic, easily recallable way, I am
Hmm.
open up. And that is what they're proving today. The more I have in my long term memory as schema and things that I can recall on command, the more I can process in my working memory. And that's what sort of makes you more of an expert or more of a polymath or whoever it is. Right? Because you just have so much that you can invoke when you want to.
Hmm. Makes sense.
Imagine every time you ask me something, if I said, no, no, just give me a second, let me just Google it, let me just do this. The whole conversation will be so staccato. Whereas when I remember, and this is way before my things. I think I was like 13, 14 or something. And I still have that. And we had a Webster's collegiate dictionary. And I had actually roughly estimated how many words were there per letter of the alphabet. And
Oh.
I had already put together a schedule of how I was going to memorize the entire dictionary. Simply because I loved using those words. And I would use those words also. So it didn't
Very
matter to
interesting.
me whether. But and that's what was fun. And
Hmm.
it tells a lot of it has stayed. And then when people say that, oh, this person, is articulate, they're able to use the right word to express the right thing. That only comes because you've memorized it, and you're
Hmm.
not wasting time thinking, what is the word that, what am I trying to say? Okay, for that, what is the right? No, no,
Yeah.
that you will see, and all of those things come about because it's there in long term. And I think, and hence the value of long term. So all the schools that are shooting down rote learning, they're actually throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You
Hmm.
need to have the memorization, but do something with it. If you are incapable of doing anything with it, please change your entire batch of teachers. Because the right thing to do is to do something with it, not to say that, okay, hence you're going to stop doing anything.
Yeah,
Even
that's
in computer science, just this thing in computer science, I remember we were raised in a department uh, which was very fastidious about how to do things in computer science, very old school, if you may call it. And it was all Linux and Unix based system. So we would memorize man pages. So there's a thing called man pages. It's the manual pages. So about every function, about every command, we just knew it. And then for a long time, we all would just work like that. We would just work. And it's not just me or something. The entire batch was like that. And the next subsequent batch, the previous batch, all of them are like that. And then you go into the world of Windows-based web app development and stuff like that. And for everything, every 2 seconds, someone would say, "No, no, we'll just Google it and find out. We'll just get on Stack Overflow and find out." And it'd be like, "Wait, if the net was down, are you guys functional or are you all just dysfunctional? If you were on an isolated system, would you ever be able to do any piece of work?" And their point was, what is the point remembering it? The point is that I have the fluency to keep typing and not keep switching windows. I will just keep doing my work. Um, but then by then we were called old school people, so we just didn't bother. So much fun remembering.
But that's a very important point that you brought out, Anji. Like the whole, it's about what's the application after you memorize. Like that's what is going to change your life, or that's, I think that's where the knowledge can bring transformation to you.
Yeah.
So this memorization is only going to ease the process. Uh, it's going to help in transformation. So like it's very
And if you
beautiful.
don't do that, if you just don't do this kind of silly recall, after a point, the mind will decide that this is not important information and it will vanish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right? Which is why the chanting kept on going. So you're always recalling, you're always keeping it fresh, you're keeping it alive, so that art will. As I, like when you're at some conferences of the IKS, you'll have some amazing scholars whom we are trying to corner with some argument, and then suddenly they'll start quoting from this stanza, from that verse, from that book, uh, and they will give you the time to even look it up to be sure that what they're saying is correct. So they're not trying to overwhelm you with language. They will quote the stanza, and then they said, "This is what you're asking. Is this?" It was very interesting. I was at this thing, the whole Pramana-based conference recently. Same thing. There was this person, Āchāra, Pandurangiji. I mean, and he was just quoting stuff. And then I said, but Acharya, but when you said this, doesn't it mean this? He says, yes, but that is what this is that you just start at. And it was just going. It's like I couldn't have caught him off guard. I couldn't have caught him off guard. And then I'm telling him something again, coincidentally, talking about the Nazadi Suktam. He says, he's like, very interesting you say this, Anand. This is what they would also say in Tata Tata, and he goes somewhere else. And after a point, you realize how little you know. How little you know. It's such a shame. It feels like how could one have wasted so much of one's life? But there was so much to know. So yeah, so there's it's immense power. It's immense power.
Yeah, I think this is something people like educators and teachers should understand what memorization actually means and what is the complete understanding of memorization. That's
Yes.
super important. Okay, Anandji. So, like, okay, I was keeping my favorite question for the end. Um,
Okay.
so, like I'm asking you because you've had the long experience. You've been over a decade in the education space. Yeah, so you clearly have said that there are a lot of problems in the education space that's waiting to be solved. So let's
Yeah.
say if you're 25 years old today, but you have all the knowledge that you've all the understanding, you have all the knowledge that you've acquired over all these years. What what specific problem would you want to address? Like what specific problem in education would you want to solve first?
Wow. So that's the problem with education. It's a spaghetti problem. You can't do just one thing in it, honestly. And I think if I were to rewind and go back to 25, like rewind 1 year and become 25. But no, like rewind decades and go back to being 25. Uh, I don't think I would pick any other different problem. I would still pick teacher excellence. as the body. Because without that, we can't achieve anything. And this problem has gotten very the gangrenes have set in terribly simply because of the choices that have been made across society, right? Whether it's the governments we've chosen or the societal choices itself, right? The two core things, one is feeding and one is learning. We have we have given it the least respect. That's why your farmers are where they are and the teachers are where they are,
Very true.
right? What is more important than the nourishment of the body and the mind? And we have given everything else important. Let's build machinery, let's build weapons, let's play with imaginary money and increase your investment this portfolios. God knows what not we have chosen to consider and treat as more important. So I don't think I would have picked anything else. I would still pick teacher excellence and the strive to make each and every teacher uh, excellent, because without that nothing can be done. If we do not have teachers breathing excellence, living and modeling the right behavior every single second,
Correct.
uh, what is education? And then we have, but unfortunately, we have all these arguments which are also real. I don't deny them. I don't want to speak from a position of privilege. There are teachers who say, "What are you talking about? We are being paid pittance, uh, and you're expecting us to do this, that, and all of this." So my point is that I don't think being paid pittance should be an excuse to be an improper human being. The point is that you're either going to be paid zero or you're going to be paid pittance. In either of them, you should choose to be a good human being, right? Why would you choose to say that, okay, if I was paid 10,000 more, I'll be a better human being? Like, you want to live a life of being an improper human being? And I think that question is something a teacher sit with before choosing to be a teacher. If that is not unsettling to them, if they feel, yeah, what's the big deal? If they're going to pay me 8,000 per month, then I'll only be this much of a human being. And if they're going to pay me 20,000, I'll be a little different. And if they pay me 40,000, I'll be this. I don't think that person should be a teacher, right? That's my take.
Yeah.
I'm saying you might as well go get 8,000 being something else, like, I don't know, a vegetable vendor or something like that. So go for it, whatever it is that it takes. I don't know what else pays that. But it is important. If you don't have a dharmic teacher, any teaching will not fructify. That is very, very, very. So that's the reason why I want to work with that. It's a gravity problem, I know, but I think it's still the only problem I want to work.
Makes complete sense. Like, I think the teacher is the central and the whole backbone of the education system. And like, I mean, whatever you teach in the class, it's finally students do see how the teacher is, what practices she's following, what he or she is following, and the way he or she is conducting uh, his life, like, the
Yeah.
various actions. So that's what, whether what you teach in the class, subtly children also do observe, and
Yes.
it's like you're saying
And it's not
something, and
just in the class, it's outside the class, it's everywhere.
right.
I
It's
remember
everywhere.
after the school when I would insist on going in the school bus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for me, it was an opportunity to be with children outside of the class space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the school space itself. Right? So we're all being tossed and bounced around on the roads together. It's all the same thing. Nearly all the teachers would get into my bus, would get onto the bus, and they'll put on their headphones or they'll get onto their WhatsApp chats. Then how are we telling our children something? I would till I get off, I would be talking to the kids about something. What did they eat? And you have to get me this recipe because I really want to know how your mom made it. All these kind of things. And we're talking about random stuff. They want to know about my mom. and my family and all of those things. We keep talking, and we never ran out of topics, right?
Mm.
Because it's an infinite world, and so much that we've all experienced. And then they want to gossip, and then in the process, you're telling them, no, we don't gossip. Just subtly you tell them. So they get to
Mm.
see that you're consistent. What you said in the school is what you've demonstrated in the bus. All of they're very good at gauging these things, right?
Mm.
So for me, I think it's also outside the classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what I
One.
tell parents, I tell teachers also. If you've decided to be a parent, you're essentially, it's not a reproductive prowess. Unfortunately, India treats it as a reproductive prowess. I can have a kid, so I will have a kid, kind of a behavior. A decision to have a child is a decision to live a life modeling dharmic ways to a new individual. If one is unwilling to do that, they should not have a child. The same thing I would tell a teacher. The choice to be a teacher is to enact and model the right way of being to plethora of children who are constantly watching you. You
Mm.
They are not watching you. They think that when you snapped at the junior teacher, nobody was watching you. That's not true. They're always watching.
Mm.
They're always hearing. So if a person decides to be a teacher, it is a resolve to hereafter live a life as a drama, as you're always modeling. And in the process, you become that.
Mm.
You won't know when you become that. You will
Mm.
become that soft spoken person. You will become the person who will not rush to judgments. It'll take time, but you'll become that person. And thereafter, you might not notice it, but your children will notice you to be that wise teacher
Mm.
who is great at the subject and all, but is so wonderful as a person, who's just filling me with goodness. And
Mm.
is the mirror that I'm able to see myself with, and all of those things. If a teacher is not willing to model her or his life thereafter for the sake of students, again, not the right person to be a teacher.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's so beautifully put. Like, couldn't agree more to whatever you have told, Anandji. Yeah. So, thank you so much, Anandji, for doing for this conversation. It was. I mean, I'm just looking at the time now. I didn't know like it was one
Really,
and a
yeah,
half.
it just got by really
Almost.
fast. Yeah,
Yeah, but this is such a good conversation. Like the
thanks.
various
I'm so
topics
happy.
that you touched upon, and you've actually given like a very a bird's eye view on what IKS looks like. It's not very restricted to just education, but it's about how that philosophy transforms one person, and if one person transforms, it's like a ripple effect, and people around that person also transforms, like the teacher, and from the teacher it passes on to the student. So I mean, thank you so much for doing this
Thank
podcast with
you.
us. Uh,
My pleasure.
thank you so much. Namaste.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Should we log out of this? Is that how it works? I leave the
Yeah,
studio
yeah.
here?
Yeah, I'll end the recording. Yeah.
All right. Right. Yeah. Bye.
Bye, Anand.